Travis Wingfield, who is a writer for the Miami Dolphins and also a host of their podcast. He was on their podcast talking about playoff situations and where the Dolphins stand and what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then talking about the other side of things, which is the Detroit Lions. And he compared, hey, the Detroit Lions, like, yeah, you got to win your division. You got to win some playoff games. Every game of the playoffs tough, but at the same time, they kind of had an easy route, comparing their route to the Dolphins route and saying, well, the Lions, they had the Bucks, man. There was nothing. The Dolphins, they had the Kansas City Chiefs. Then the Steelers just decided they were catching strays in this bad boy. This is what Wingfield had to say. Quote, sometimes winning playoff games is as favorable as your draw. Granted, good for the Lions. They won their division, and the Rams team was not an easy out, even though I picked against them all year. This was a good Rams football team that they beat, but they get the Bucks in the divisional round. Can we have that? Can we get the Steelers at home in the divisional round this year? That would be a guaranteed trip to the conference championship game this year. The Pittsburgh Steelers randomly catching strays on a Monday afternoon. Wild. Let me start by saying this. I'm not going to sit here and try to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers deserve any praise in the playoffs, because if you don't win a playoff game in 7 years, you don't have any reputation to win a playoff game. Okay. At the same time, let me just drop a really quick stat here. Just a very simple stat. The Miami Dolphins, okay, last playoff win. Take a guess at when that was.
Oh, does it start with a 19?
No.
Okay.
No, it's very close. Say,
it's very it feels
close.
Like it has to be close to that.
It's very close. 2000 was the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game. The year 2000. We've had like 7, the world is going to end since the last time the Miami Dolphins have won a playoff game. The last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won a playoff game was in 2016 against who? The Miami Dolphins. So at some point, you just don't throw stones in a glass house. And that is where Travis Wingfield may have messed up. Now, are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to use a random dude who writes for the team as bulletin board material in July? No chance. But if they run into this team in January in Miami, you best believe this is going to resurface and that things are going to just happen. And it's very simple. You just don't throw strays in July, especially if you work for the team and you're trying not to aggravate other teams, especially about the playoffs. I'm a karma guy. You just don't jinx things, especially 6 months early. Wild times. I sent it to you this morning. Your thoughts?
I was laughing my butt off reading that. I was like, really? In July, we're going to do this, especially a team like the Miami Dolphins. We're not even talking about, if it's the Baltimore Ravens, there's a history between the two organizations. The Ravens were in the AFC Championship last year, but the Miami Dolphins have folded in the playoffs the last 2 years, especially just down the stretch in general, not just the playoffs. If you get to the, week 10 and beyond of the Miami Dolphins, they just have not been the same team as they were in August and September. And there's a, obvious reason for that. 1 year it was Tua was injured. The next year it was, this is a team that thrives on good weather and fast tracks. And you just don't get that, especially in the playoffs. And even if you're down in Miami, the matchup between the Steelers and the Dolphins, the last time they faced off, I mean, obviously the Dolphins won, but they had to stave off a fourth quarter game-winning drive from rookie Kenny Pickett in his third or fourth start with Matt Canada at the helm. I think this team is going to be a little bit better. And that Miami team, while they've made some improvements, I don't think that it's been quite as large as the Steelers. And especially when you get to that time of the year, I think coaching matters. And I think McDaniel has shrunk a little bit when that ends up being the case. And Mike Tomlin, again, you need to go out there and prove it. But in the history, Mike Tomlin has had some success, but it's just been a while.
Yes. Look at the end of the day, you have to, it would be, there's two sides of this conversations. Okay. Of this conversation. The first one is you have to beat teams like the Kansas City Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl anyways. So why are you trying to have the easy route? Nobody wants the easy route. Nobody wants the easy route to the Super Bowl. I mean, if you could get it, cool. You're not going to get it in the AFC. It's impossible to get an easy route to the playoffs or to the Super Bowl in the AFC. You got to go through the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs, probably the Pittsburgh Steelers, potentially the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, if the Buffalo Bills are still good, the Buffalo Bills, there's just the New York Jets could be in there. There's so many teams that you're like, yep, that's not easy. No matter what, you got challenging games. And then to guarantee something that your team has, like, this just you don't do it. You don't do it. Not this, and you have no idea what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to look like. Like you could sit here and say, oh, that's a guaranteed win. Maybe last year. I don't know about this year. I don't. The defense got better. The quarterback situation's better. The running back situation is going to be better. The offensive line is better. The offensive coordinator is better. The general manager is here for 2 years now. So now you got actual traction with things that are happening. There's so much going on for a team to be. This is not a guaranteed, and to be totally honest, of all the teams that made the playoffs last year, I honestly think the easiest guarantee outside of potentially like the Jacksonville Jaguars at the time, because they showed up in the playoffs, but heading into the playoffs was probably the Miami Dolphins. Like, as crazy as that sounds, was potentially the Miami Dolphins. The Cleveland Browns might have been in there, but Joe Flacco was red hot. So, there were things going on. I don't know. Wild times, but bulletin board material, man, in July. That is what it is. And if you're going to send the Steelers to, look at, dude, Steelers got to go to Miami, the divisional playoff round. I'm not complaining. It's January. It's cold here. I will go to Miami for a weekend. 0 questions asked.